today's podcast, we chat with Paul Grint, who is the CEO of AmpliPhi Biosciences Corporation and also a member of KGI's Advisory Council. This episode is also co-hosted by KGI Director of Corporate Partnerships, Shannon Braun. Paul, as we know, you started as CEO in May of 2017, and previously you had served on AmpliPhi's board of directors for almost 2 years. What went into that decision to change roles, and what excites you about the company today?
Thank you. A good question. Let me take the second part first. So, by background, I trained in infectious disease, and I've had an interest for a very, very long time in evolving infections and how one brings about new therapies to treat those. Hence the reason I actually joined the board of directors of AmpliPhi now almost 3 years ago. New technology, I believe it's very important as bacterial infections become more and more resistant to some of the current and even potentially the future antibiotics. So I was able to help out the company as a board member. Back just over a year ago, the board asked me to step in as the CEO role. It was a good time based on where the company was. We'd finished a lot of the preclinical work, had done some early stage phase 1 work, and given my background and experience in developing other drugs in the infectious disease area, given the fact we were getting into significant interactions with regulators, particularly the FDA, and designing the phase 2 clinical trials, I had the right background to then assist the company, I think more from a day-to-day basis rather than as a member of the board of directors.
And at the core of AmpliPhi's mission is being able to address the issue of antibiotic resistance. Can you elaborate on how your company is a key player in combating that looming public health crisis?
The problem we have is that, unfortunately, the bacteria mutate very, very quickly. There are areas where we see a lot of resistance to existing antibiotics. As new antibiotics are introduced, unfortunately, their sort of lifespan, their useful lifespan is becoming shorter and shorter as resistance develops more quickly. And so I think a number of people hold a strong belief that as well as new antibiotics, we also need other new mechanisms to tackle the multi-drug resistant bacteria. AmpliPhi is a very, very interesting company. We use bacteriophages, and these are natural so-called predators of bacteria that have existed ever since bacteria have. The key, though, is now to be able to manufacture them utilizing modern manufacturing techniques, obviously meet all the requirements that has to be met from a regulatory standpoint for a consistent product. And we have that, and that now allows us to conduct the clinical trials to actually demonstrate the efficacy of the bacteriophage.
So each year, KGI graduates enter the biotech and healthcare industry. What does your company look for, or you personally look for in a new hire?
Question. So the answer is it depends on the role. To be honest with you, one of the most important things I look for in any hire is fit with the company, fit with the company culture. That to me is really, really critical. There are a lot of good people around with good skills, but do they have a passion for what we're doing, and are they going to fit, with regard to how we go about our day-to-day work? It is very different being in a small company where everyone wears multiple hats doing different roles. That can be very attractive for some individuals and not so attractive for others.
You've been involved with KGI as a member of the Advisory Council going on 15 years now, you mentioned before we hit record. Can you share just your impressions of KGI and how it's grown and the impact it makes on industry?
Yeah, no, the growth has been tremendous. I mean, as I look back over that period of time from when I first started in the Advisory Council, which I believe was about 15 years ago, so not long after the founding of KGI, significant transformation, definitely. And clearly, at least in my view, obviously enabling students to come out with skill sets that will better set them up in the life science industry. I have in the past had a number of interns from KGI. I've even hired 2 KGI graduates back in previous companies that I've been in. So very pleased with where the success has gone and look forward to see where it's going to go in the future.
Visiting KGI today and giving a talk to our students, even as CEO and being president of all these different companies, you can still impart so much wisdom on them. But looking at your current leadership team at AmpliPhi, you have a CFO, COO, and 3 vice presidents. What strengths do you bring to that team, and how would you describe your leadership style? Because I think with any KGI student, long term, most of them want to be where you're sitting now. So any description or self-reflection on your leadership style, I think will help them.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I've been privileged through my 25 plus year now career in industry to work for a number of big companies, both big biotech, big pharmaceutical, but also smaller ones. I do personally favor smaller companies, generally because they tend to be doing more interesting, novel, cutting-edge things, which is what I've always been interested in through my career. Leadership style is one of being very open and honest. It takes a team to solve things, so we're looking for good team members. We ourselves are a public company, a small market cap public company. And so the other two key executives that I have, my chief financial officer and chief operating officer, obviously play a critical role with everything we have to do from being a public company standpoint, with all the reporting that we have to do there. Otherwise, we are very, very science driven. We do have an interesting geography, which adds to a bit of the challenge from a management standpoint. Our headquarters are in San Diego, where my other two C-level executives are. And we have a handful of people. Our research group, our vice president of research and her team is based in Sydney, Australia. And so that again, that's a long way with a different time zone. And then our manufacturing site actually is in Slovenia, on the border of Central and Eastern Europe. So again, I have 16 people out there we have to manage. So I've been through companies where everyone's been under one roof, and that's a certain type of culture and a certain type of management style. And obviously we're geographically diverse. So we have to think very, very hard and frequently about that communication over distance to make sure that everyone's informed and appraised of what's happening and understands their role, as we move forward, and obviously share in the successes and sometimes the failures that we have as we move through the programs.
So, as you mentioned, you do have 2 decades of leadership experience in biologics and small molecules. What advice can you give one of our students just starting out in their career?
It's interesting. I talk to some people sometimes, and they look at my CV and they say, well, you've moved around a lot of different jobs. And the answer is yes. Some of that was due to company restructuring and changes, which happens in our industry. Some of that was due to me making decisions that I wanted to move on to something else. But at the core of everything, I think for me at least, and advice I would give is do something you're really interested and excited about. And hopefully the rest will follow. If you're not really excited and enjoying what you're doing, then my advice would be go and find something that you are excited about.
Well, thanks, Paul, for all your service on advisory council and obviously imparting mentorship and these tips both on today's podcast and your visit with the students here in that presentation. And thanks to Shannon for co-hosting. And we look forward to continuing the connection between AmpliPhi Biosciences, Paul, and all of the the folks with your leadership team as well. So thanks again.